So we were with the president yesterday, just in the hours before the strikes by Israel on Iran commenced. And I can tell you the president was in a great mood. We had just had a really good, wide-ranging discussion. We spent, I don't know, about a half an hour with him in the Oval Office. Our friends Caroline Levitt and Margot Martin and Stephen Miller and J.D. Vance, they came by, Vice President Vance, and just spent some time with us. We wanted to talk to them about how the administration is just making us all so proud, and they said very nice things about the show. But there was one thing on the substance side. Now, that just to be clear, the discussion with Trump wasn't off the record, but private conversations. But there's one thing. Yes, sir.
You got a guest. Ben Shapiro is waiting to talk with us, and you are.
I thought that was the next hour. I'm sorry. That is on me. That is on me. Ben is always welcome. Ben, thank you, from the founder of the Daily Wire and the host of the Ben Shapiro Show. And Ben, at least you know what our segment will be in the halfway mark of the next hour. So thank you.
Oh my gosh! I mean, guys, that's an amazing forward pitch. I love that. I cannot wait to hear that story. That is just really well done.
That tease was sold so hard that I actually convinced myself that's where we were going. So, all right, Ben, we got to do a hard turn here. We got to turn like an F-18 that's just commenced a strike run or finished one. Tell us about your first sense of what's gone on here with the strikes in Iran against the reactors and against the military targets.
I mean, first of all, astonishing level of success from the Israelis here. So my understanding is from all my sources on the ground on both sides, meaning American and Israeli, that Israel has completely destroyed the Natanz nuclear reactor, that Israel is currently doing heavy damage to other nuclear reactors around the region. They took out perhaps nearly the entire echelon of the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, in targeted strikes. Many of them were killed in their beds. They were not suspecting that this was going to happen. There was apparently an operation that the Israelis told Fox News about in which they had essentially suckered a bunch of top IRGC generals into a room to plan possible retaliation next week. And they had essentially, the Israelis had, it sounds like, leaked information to them to get them to do that, and then kept them in the room and then hit the room and killed everybody in the room. They had Mossad agents on the ground who had set up effectively a drone factory on the ground in Iran, and then they were releasing these drones to take out a lot of Iranian munitions, including the ballistic missile stocks that they were going to use to respond to Israel. And so for, at this point, more than 12 hours, Israel has been running bombing raids over Iran utterly unfettered. I mean, first of all, Iran does not have an effective air force. Iran's air force is all old F-14s and Su-24s and stuff that just will not hold up to an F-16 or an F-35. But beyond that, the ballistic missile stores have been really devastated. Iran's arsenal has been really deeply harmed, and that means that their capacity to respond has been at the very least limited. And so we've seen pretty desultory response from Iran so far. 100 drones that were shot down last night, and 100 drones that were shot down today. And then just a few minutes ago, there was an announcement that there's a belief that Iran is firing ballistic missiles right now. Pretty much all the countries in the region are scrambling to knock those down. That includes supposed condemners of the Israelis, like the Saudis. The Saudis put out a statement that basically was the Catherine Hahn Wink from WandaVision. We're so sad. We're really upset that Israel that no one is happier in the region than Mohammed bin Salman that Israel did this. And so they've been participating in knocking down the ordinance coming the other way. The Jordanians have, the Egyptians have, the Americans have, the Brits have. And so right now this appears to be one of the most shockingly successful military operations in modern history. And the other competitor for that title is probably the Beaver operation from last year. So the IDF is really flexing an extraordinary amount of muscle right now.
Ben, what happens with the Ayatollah? Because you take out all of his military leadership. He's been in command now since 1979, the revolution. Thanks for coming on. And now 2 generations later, he doesn't have the ability to defend his people at all against what he calls the great Satan in Israel, and they're wiping him out. How do you think this is a really interesting question, I think. How do you think ordinary Iranians are responding to this to the extent they can get accurate information? And what happens for him going forward based on what we're seeing right now?
So the first thing that to understand is that the Iranian regime is deeply fearful for its future, not from the external forces, but from internal forces. And the way you can tell this is that I was informed by an Israeli source today that very early on, after it became clear that Israel had complete control over the Iranian airspace, and I mean complete control, they're flying daytime raids, they're apparently refueling in Syrian airspace. They're flying basically unfettered throughout Iran. That during this time, Iran shut down their entire internet. Because they are afraid that the Iranians, the Iranian people are going to get, number one, news from outside, number two, that they're going to convey news from inside, and that they might be able to use the internet to coordinate some sort of move against the regime. The Iranian people hate the regime. They do not like the regime. They are generally actually quite pro-America and also pro-Israel. And so there's been a deep fear among the Ayatollahs that this was going to be the result of getting rid of the nuclear program, which is why they were so hesitant to get rid of the nuclear program. All Iran had was essentially its oil fields and a prospective nuclear program. And they were trying to rush toward a bomb, hoping that they could become essentially the Kim regime in North Korea, isolated, not well involved in the world economy, but almost untouchable because of the presence of a nuclear weapon. And Israel has basically ended that, at least for the foreseeable future, not only by taking out hardware, but by killing pretty much every major Iranian nuclear scientist there is. Astonishing operation again. And so if you're the Ayatollahs at this point, you're living in fear for your life from your own people. The IRGC seems to be in a state of disrepair because they're just, again, the leadership status was, Israel did to them what they just did to Hezbollah. They wiped out a lot of their leadership. And so the reason I think that Israel has not struck the Ayatollahs directly is because they're using that as a sort of deterrent for Iran firing more ballistic missiles or attempting to fire at American troops or something like that. Basically, the case being, if you kill the Ayatollahs, then there's nothing left except, whoever has their finger on the button. If you leave the Ayatollahs in place for now, then what you're saying to the Ayatollahs is, listen, you fire back, you go too hard here, your oil fields are on fire and you're dead. And I think that's likely the strategy right now. Israel has essentially said that openly. Just about an hour ago, they released a statement saying that if too many ballistic missiles are fired at Israel, or if they're fired at population centers in Israel, then other targets, wink, wink, nod, nod, maybe the Ayatollahs, probably the oil fields go up in flames.
We're speaking to Ben Shapiro, founder of the Daily Wire, host of the Ben Shapiro Show. Ben, give me, in your mind, the I'd say realistic but optimistic case for the Middle East focused on Israel security, the future of Iran, and regional developments. So again, I know I'm asking you to look into the future, and with the Middle East, that's a very difficult thing, and everything can change in a day. All those caveats apply. What is the reasonable but optimistic case as you see it 6 months out from now?
Well, I mean, I think 6 months out from now, the realistic, there's the ultra-optimistic case, which is the regime falls, right? And that's not caused by some sort of ground invasion, which literally no one wants, no one is calling for, and anybody who's telling you that anyone is calling for that is a liar, okay? The people who you're hearing say that, they're not telling the truth. It is not plausible, nor is it workable, nor is it anything that anybody wants to do. If the regime were to fall, that's obviously not totally off the table, but that would have to come from internal machinations inside Iran. Assuming that doesn't happen, the most plausible scenario at this point is that Iran's military is rendered essentially toothless, that Iran is isolated, that they do not have any projective power in the region, and as a result, many of the states that are threatened by Iran start to seek to cut a deal with allies of the United States. That includes Syria, which already is making overtures toward the United States and toward Israel. That includes Lebanon. One of the most astonishing statements that came out very early here is that Lebanon, which had been run by Hezbollah until the beginning of last year when Israel basically wrecked Hezbollah, until then, Hezbollah ran the place. Hezbollah put out a statement saying that they stood in solidarity with Iran, and then basically gave them a high five as they drowned. I mean, they were not going to do anything because they're afraid that Israel is going to destroy them. So you could see a complete reorientation of the Middle East. The next step would presumably be, they're already getting close to the end in Gaza, that in a few weeks, Israel will establish complete security control over the Gaza Strip. You would hope that there's some sort of deal to get the hostages out, because now Hamas literally has no sponsors. That's the best case scenario. If that doesn't hit, either way, Israel's going to have to establish security control over the Gaza Strip. And then you would imagine that there's going to be some talk, some pretty open talk about economic cooperation between the Saudis, UAE, Bahrain, and Israel. I mean, UAE and Bahrain are already members of the Abraham Accords. In the Middle East, the rule is very simple. It's a strong horse region. Whoever is the strong horse is the party that people follow and want to be partners with. There's no question at this point in time, Israel is by far the strongest military force in the region, and they're flexing that today.
Last question for you, Ben. We appreciate the time. By the way, Ben, you've got a new book out called Lions and Scavengers, The True Story of America, that is going to be out in September. Buck and I talked about this earlier. I'm curious your analysis in the immediate aftermath. Is October 7th looking to be one of the most catastrophic strategic decisions made ever? And certainly in the lives of anybody out there listening right now, when you look at what's happened to Hamas, Hezbollah, what's happened in Syria, and now what's happening to Iran. Is that a fair characterization in your mind?
Absolutely. It's Pearl Harbor, right? Pearl Harbor in the moment looks really good for the Japanese, and it turns out that it ends with the complete destruction of the Japanese regime and their control over all external territory. That's what this looks like. It looks like October 7th, which was activated by the Iranians, has now resulted in the complete destruction of Hamas, one of their proxies, Hezbollah, another one of their proxies, the Assad regime, which they were using as a quasi-proxy, and now the complete destruction of a huge swath of their military capacity right at home. It's just a disastrous decision. And by the way, here, I just want to say that all Americans, for 1,000 reasons, but for this reason today, should be so grateful that Donald Trump is president and Kamala Harris is not president. I mean, Donald Trump has been absolutely 100% consistent on this issue before he was president to now. He said the JCPOA was the worst deal in history. He said Iran could not go nuclear. He has never threatened to withdraw aid from Israel. He did not get America directly involved in this. He said that Israel is a good partner to America, which means they should go fight their own battles. And Israel is going and fighting that battle right now. It's perfectly played by President Trump. President Trump's statements today, I have to say, are simultaneously inspiring and absolutely hilarious. I mean, I don't know if you saw that exchange with Dana Bash a little bit earlier, where the president was talking about the death of many of the sort of top Iranian decision makers, and she said from the Israelis, well, it wasn't from COVID.
Yeah. Although they might be counted as COVID deaths, to be fair, Ben. Based on the precedent set 5 years ago. Look, the book is great. We appreciate you coming on. Keep up the good work at the Daily Wire, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks so much.